And here we are, full circle. So we're our program is kind of really jumping into trapping stuff, kind of starting this year. So we started with some fur bear content last year. Did like a raccoon workshop, and we've done webinars and stuff like that. And so this is just kind of the continuation of that evolution. So we're getting it on our podcast here, and then that's also going to talk about some stuff that we have coming up, like a trapping webinar. And we're still working on getting a trapping in-person workshop scheduled too. So
Okay.
got those things coming, and then we're just going to keep, expanding that and
Right.
making the how-to videos that are state specific, because as trapping regulations vary so much state to state that YouTube is an awesome tool, but the people who watch it, there's so many little caveats, whether it's site exposed bait or even trapping highway right-of-ways or all
Yeah.
these issues, which can be super confusing. So we want to try to make one that's Illinois specific, that's reliable, that people know they can come to that and get just information that's gonna make them legal and ethical trappers here. So that's kind of our little story in a nutshell, and kind of why we're doing this podcast. So
Cool. Yeah, no, and we need it. I wish every state or even half of the states, would be able to do something like this. My own state can't even, so it's important. It's definitely needed.
yeah, I feel like trapping is kind of the last thing to get on the R3 docket, because
Hmm.
so few people do it. There's this idea that trapping is so commercial, right? That all these trappers are out there making money hand over fist, and like they don't want to promote it because it's this profitable thing. When in reality, the past 20 years, probably a higher percentage of hunters have profited from hunting than trappers have from trapping. If you look at
Yeah, and
trappers.
and it's crazy. So we've got two really great the hunter ed, trapper ed guys, because we have a required 2-day course here in New Jersey. And they pulled some really crazy statistics for last year. And they put something like 200 and I don't know, 50 people through the Trapper's Ed last year. And they polled, like, they would go and pull some of the classes and ask, who here wants to trap coyotes? Obviously we can bait in New Jersey. So everybody wants to get raccoons off their deer bait, and everybody wants to get coyotes. But they asked if anybody was here to trap to sell furs, and I forget how they phrased the question, but I think it was like, 9 out of 10 people in the class, or actually I think there was one person who even knew what a fur market was, or knew that there was a potential for a fur market. And we're seeing that across the country. And I tell people all the time, when I took Trapper's Ed in 2015, I had no idea what a fur market was. I was like, what is, and I still, up until I started working for the FTA, was kind of confused about it. Like, it didn't make sense to me, because it's not a world I grew up in, and I didn't have that person who could kind of, walk me through those steps. And so it's so important to meet people where they are right now, especially in R3 work. I always say, like, they should have added 2 more R's on it, right? It should be relatable, and it should be relevant. And if you can't deliver those last 2 R's, your first 3 are they mean nothing. And so, yeah, so it's important. And that's really great that you guys are kind of trying to just, get it in a full circle situation, because I just sat at a trappers meeting on Sunday trying to sell them on doing, a women's camp. And one of the things I said to them was, these ladies who I'm pulling into mentored deer hunts and turkey hunts and waterfowl hunts want to learn how to trap. They want to learn about trapping and whether or not they're ever going to trap. I go, but here's my thing. They don't even know what the fur bearers are. They don't know how to identify scat. They don't know how to identify, coyote prints. And so I said, we've got to really, you can't just throw them into trapper ed. They're going to get there and they're going to be so overwhelmed. They're not going to remember anything. They're not going to and so I said, I kind of reverse psychology, everybody. We do a fur sewing 101, gets people really interested. I have, we have a female instructor who's a big time trapper in Maryland, and she does commercial meat for fur bearers too. And so she just, as she's teaching, she's talking and she's telling everybody. And And, that kind of lights that excitement, like, oh, so this is like a natural resource that I can then do this with. And so that's kind of what I do. And they just don't, if you aren't really involved in R3 and you do things the way you've always done them, then that doesn't make sense to you. And it's not gonna, they don't get that how we would want to do that kind of a program, because in their mind, and there's nothing wrong with this because it does work, is that they do things the way that they do things because that's how they've done them. And that's how they learned about trapping or, whatever. And so, but with this new, or I should say newer class of outdoors people, they don't have any of that outdoor background. They don't have any of that outdoor knowledge. I took Trapper Ed as a hunter so that I could learn more about the woods and I could understand more about the fur bearers and the animals that were in the woods with them. So, long tangent short, there's so much that needs to be done and there's so many ways to do it. But I wrote about it in my column in Fur Taker last month, that educating people is so important. It's, don't assume people know. Don't assume that they can identify coyote scat. I mean, I've got, we've had wildlife technicians go through trappers college that didn't know, because of the region that they were from, couldn't identify some of the animal scat and prints because they didn't have them in their region. And so, that's things you have to like remember. And I think, for me as a newer hunter in the last, 15 years, I still remember what it was like to not know anything and not, and be like completely just new. And I think, that kind of gives me a little bit of an edge in educating newer folks and knowing that like we've got to meet them where they are. I can't just dump all this knowledge on them in 24 hours and expect them to understand it, let alone retain it. So
Yeah, it's like a fire hose, ain't it? Just like trying to get a drink from a
yeah.
fire hose because there's so much in trapping, like you said. I mean, that's an excellent way that you phrase it. Meet them where they are, because and it's tough for those old school trappers to understand, right? Because they grew up salt curing hams and using apple presses, and maybe they still don't have a computer to this day. They live in a different world, but people of today are separated from all that stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's going down to the basics. So that's exactly the kind of tangent we're looking for. So don't apologize for that. Hello, and welcome to the Hunting Illinois podcast. On today's episode, we have a special guest with us from the Fur Takers of America, which was an awesome organization that we worked with Hunt Camp. They really helped us out with promotion of the events. We got some awesome donations. There's a couple of you out there that won some sweet trapping prize packages. I think there was even a fully tanned beaver up there that came from our FTA rep, so that was awesome. Made the prize table sweet.
Yeah, and I think
The
that
first
actually went first.
Yeah. Yep.
It was the very first thing picked, yeah. And
Yep.
we
Yeah.
had binoculars, range finders, and they keyed right in on that beaver and snatched it up. But anyway, Fur Takers of America, an awesome partner that we've been working with, and we have Cristina Jones from FTA here with us today, and we're going to talk all about FTA, what they do. We're going to talk about a rendezvous that they have coming up this summer that's not too far away, that I think a lot of you are going to want to mark on your calendars, and you're going to want to wind up going to that thing. We're going to talk about their Trappers College, which is this really sweet and unique training that they have, which is also not very far away. Not in Illinois, but we're talking one state away on both of these things. So definitely close enough and cool enough that everybody needs to mark them down on their calendar and consider them if trapping's something that interests you. And then we're just going to talk about trapping and why trapping might appeal to people who are just getting into the outdoors. So with that, I want to turn it over to Cristina, and if you could just give us a little brief intro about you, and then let us know about Fur Takers of America, kind of what does FTA strive to do, and what are you guys all about?
Awesome. Thank you, Curtis and Dan and Jason, for having me today. I'm really excited to be here. So, first and foremost, I think I have to admit I live in New Jersey, so I can't really speak to a lot of the Illinois specifics, but so I am the business executive for the Fur Takers of America, and I came on board in the spring of 2021. I'm about to celebrate 2 years, so it's pretty exciting. And I am kind of the overseer, office person, kind of guiding the organization in the business background. And we've got an incredible board full of volunteers and just some really awesome volunteers across the country. And what do we do? So we do a lot. I always kind of pigeonhole us into a membership organization, which we are. And so we have a membership, obviously, of about 3,000 across the country, and every member gets a 12-month subscription to our magazine, Fur Taker Magazine, which is chock full of information about all kinds of trapping. I mean, literally from running long lines out in the West to ADC work, animal control work, to just some fun stories. We've got a retired game warden who writes a really awesome article, and just some really great information for anybody, whether you're a beginner or you've been a trapper your whole life. So we do that, and that is kind of like what we do and what we hang our hat on. We also, it's legislative season right now, and we track bills all over the country, legislation all over the country, just to kind of see what's going on. And since I've been here, that has just compounded. And I'm involved in that. I kind of piggyback with our current president, to make sure that we've got a voice and we've got representation and we know what's going on, so that we can represent the membership not only in a state level but a national level, because a lot of times everything kind of overlaps from one state to the other. And then the other thing we try to really hang our hat on is education. We are an organization that is um, built and founded and really just based in education, whether it be Trappers College, whether it be helping out with events like what you guys are doing, or women's trapping camp up in Wisconsin. We pitched in where we could with that. And I think if you speak to any of our members or volunteers or board members, they are, all, whether it's trapping education instructors in their states or hosting trapper workshops or anything like that, doing demos, you name it, they're all about it. And so, that's really kind of, I think, one of the things that drew me to work with the FTA is that it's such an education-based organization. And so, yeah, I mean, we're a national organization. We are about to celebrate our 55th anniversary at convention this year, Rendezvous up in Wisconsin. And we've got a lot of really great things going on. And, we are always looking to partner with organizations and agencies and just kind of get the love for trapping out there, and share what is possible.
Oh yeah, that's awesome. So the education, awesome. I love that about the FTA, but I think it's also important you talked about legislative season, because really trapping in a lot of ways, and I mean hunting fur bears is the front lines of the battlefield between hunters and anti-hunters, right? Because it's lower participation rates. People don't understand it. It's kind of the um, when they talk about in Jurassic Park, right? The raptors are trying to find the weakest spot of the fence. Well, they think that they have it there, and of course, trappers and wildlife agencies have spent a lot of time putting data together to circumvent all those things. But if it weren't for groups like the FTA that can step in on a national level, it would be really hard for trappers to battle these things, even when they have the data in their favor, just because it is such a small group of people. It's easy to get bulldozed and run over. So yeah, FTA is looking out for the little guy in that, and so education awesome, but that part's really important too, because
Mhm.
it's tough to educate if everything that we can do gets taken away by people who never go outside. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
important too. But Yeah, so you mentioned the rendezvous, which I want to get right into this because these things are fun. And I don't even know how to explain it to somebody who's never been to it, but just imagine a state fair but 150 years ago, and that's kind of what it is. It's a blast, and I've taken a bunch of people to it who aren't trappers, and I've never nobody has ever complained. They've all been super stoked that they've come to one of these events. NTA does one too. So the
Mhm.
FTA, NTA both do one rendezvous each year. That's kind of, well, actually, there might be more than one. I think there's a Western one too. But anyway, these are big events. This one's going to be in Jefferson County, Wisconsin, which is not that far away, especially for folks up in the Chicago area. It's probably,
Yeah.
I'm guessing, within 2 or 3 hours of Chicago. So um, go there. You want to get the camping because you want to camp out there and you want to talk to these folks all day and all night because that's where the magic is. It's a bunch of trappers that are getting together. There's going to be demos all day. You can go and sit and basically get college level education all day, sitting on these demos, learning from the best in the world. Then you can walk around all the vendor buildings, which every piece of equipment you can imagine. But not only that, but the arts and crafts. You know, there's always a lady that's she makes custom elk hide moccasins. You walk up and she'll draw a picture of your foot, and she'll make you custom elk or moose skin, whatever she's got moccasins. Where else are you gonna find that? Other than an FTA rendezvous. And wow, so yeah, I talked about it a lot. I'm sure you got a couple things to say about it too. So
Yeah. So speaking of really cool items, my first rendezvous was actually 2 years ago in Indiana. And I remember walking in and walking by a booth and they had a turkey foot back scratcher. And like my husband and I are big turkey hunters. And so I was like, that is like the coolest thing I've ever seen. It's creepy, but it's cool. Like, it's one of those like people would totally discuss that item if I just randomly had it sitting on like my dining room table. So things like that. But, like Curtis said, it was mind blowing to me to walk in to a rendezvous and I had no idea what to expect. Right. So I called like our general organizer and I was like, you need to tell me like, what is this? Like, what am I driving to Indiana and what am I expecting? And you described it perfectly. I tell people it's like a county fair. So, we're always at a fairground. It's set up like a fair would be set up. There's usually tailgaters who will have anything and everything you could ever imagine. And then there's also going to be, the ability to purchase used traps, which is awesome for beginners to make that investment. And
even not beginners, I just have to say I always want used because you buy a new trap, you're like a month away from being able to set that darn thing. I want to buy used all day because it's 2/3 of the way there. But I
yeah,
just had to throw that in.
yeah, and there's going to be lure makers and like literally everything, anything you could think of to do with trapping, but then also just outdoors generally. So we do because what's not a great excuse in June to have a whole outdoor kind of thing going on. And I know Wisconsin has some really great things going on, and it's going to be June 22nd through the 24th up at Jefferson County Fairgrounds, and it is our 55th anniversary celebration. So that will be going on too. And aside from, the general everyday fare of walking through the buildings and seeing all the vendors, there's going to be some really amazing demos. They set up a really awesome demo area. And so I didn't know, you don't know what to expect. I'm thinking they're going to be doing demos in, like where they do like the derby,
Wow.
and they build like this whole
It's
beaver
like a trapping
ponds. Yeah,
amphitheater.
it's
It's got like a little
crazy.
creek and a pond. I mean, it's
Yeah.
cool.
And so
It's cool.
you're literally seeing them, and we bring a videographer in and they've got screens so that you get like the above angle and side angles, and they are going to walk you through how to set, all different kinds of sets. And there will be demos on everything from like basic beaver trapping to, coyote trapping to um we also do workshops on, raccoons and DPs and the things that really are kind of probably the most popular at this point. And then like last year, I did a workshop on social media and trapping, and this year I think we're going to do it again, and I think we're going to do a workshop on volunteering with your trapping organization, what that looks like, what, what's out there to get involved in. And it's just fun. It's just, and Curtis, you mentioned it, the conversation, the being able to access that amount of trapping institutional knowledge and stories is priceless. You will not find that anywhere. And everybody is so friendly and everybody's willing to talk. And, so it's a great experience. They have bonfires every night, planned. And so, like Curtis said, definitely camp. And it's just a really neat experience. We'll have, the FTA will have a, auction one night, which will have some really cool, we had some really amazing, we put a call out to our board members last year to kind of make some homemade things, and I had no idea what was going to show up, and nobody gave me a heads up, and I was like, okay, is anybody going to bring anything? And we had this amazing fire pit that was handmade by one of our board members, and another board member made this beautiful bobcat lamp with like our bobcat logo, if you've ever seen the FTA logo, and just some really cool things. And there's always like some really good deals. I got some skinning boards last year for, pretty inexpensive and things like that. All the way up to, trapping adventures and outdoor adventures and that kind of thing. So definitely, and it is kid friendly. There will be kids activities. So it's kind of a fun, and I hesitate to say inexpensive, because you cannot bring your family anywhere, for like under $100, and it's like $10 a person to get in. And I don't know yet what, if kids are going to be free or not, but they're usually very inexpensive as well. So, very, very, very family friendly. And usually they've got a bunch of kids stuff going on. We're just getting started on that. And yeah, there'll be a lot of neat things going on. And we have our rendezvous. That's our national rendezvous. So everybody will be there. Stop by the FTA booth. I'll be there. But then a lot of our states also have their own rendezvous. So, Indiana puts on their own, and I don't know if Illinois does or not, but they definitely have some activities. And the NTA, again, also, they've got a bunch of rendezvous. So there's always kind of something going on from the beginning of June all the way through November. There's some kind of trapping event, probably every weekend within, a 6-hour drive from Illinois.
That's awesome. I'm really glad you brought up the idea of, the conversations that you have at this event, even outside of, the structured workshop and demos. Because, one thing I find very appealing about the trapper community, and I've mentioned this on the podcast several times, but I am of a firm belief that trappers are some of the best biologists and wildlife ecologists out there. They understand the animal behavior, that predator-prey relationship, as well as the habitat and how they can almost predict where these animals move through the landscape. And just having that, level of experience at your disposal to just go up to somebody and ask them a simple question. That is just hard to find these days. So that's definitely something I'm looking forward to about the rendezvous, is just, mingling and just having these conversations with some of the experienced people that are there.
Yeah, definitely.
Like
and
if you want to hear what people who aren't on social media are talking about,
Yeah.
come to the trapping rendezvous. I promise you, it's way better than the opposite. It's good stuff. And
yeah,
like Dan said, these people they're biologists. I
Yes,
don't
yes.
care. It could be that you might look like the biggest hillbilly in the whole place, but you start talking about animals and they know. They know when the animals arrive. They know when the animals leave. They know the woods like Stephen Hawking knew astrophysics. So having those conversations and just knowing that this still happens today. Some of you out there watch those shows, right? I don't even watch them, so I don't know the names, but there's like the trapping shows that are popular on there's
All like
lots of
Discovery Channel
yeah,
and
yeah,
Yeah, like
yeah.
Alone or
Yeah,
North.
there's some
Yeah,
big
I don't
ones.
even
I
know
don't even
anymore.
know. But they
I
got
don't know.
super popular, and people were watching this and kind of getting a taste of that lifestyle. And you don't need to have a taste. You can eat the whole pie if you just come to this rendezvous, camp out, and like Christina said, hop around one of those bonfires, maybe a beverage in your hand, and you'll hear some stories that'll get you thinking that maybe you should add that to your calendar every year. I can promise you that.
yeah, yep.
So yeah, well, that's good. I think you officially sold the whole crew, so we will be there. We'll see you in Jefferson County on the weekend of June 22nd. And I'm
Yep.
glad you brought up the ticket prices too, because it is probably the least
Yeah.
expensive thing you'll do the whole summer, and it may be
Literally.
the most memorable.
Yeah.
It really
Yep.
might.
Yeah, and it's great because I kind of look at it for $10 to get in the door, or whatever it is. It's pennies on the dollar, really. Then like I can spend money on traps. I can actually spend money. Most times you're going somewhere and it's so expensive to get in that you can't purchase anything. I always equate it to like, oh my God, like tickets to go to a concert now, right? So expensive. You can't even afford a t-shirt when you get in there because they're
Right.
$50. And that is like the exact opposite of what a trappers convention is. You're gonna be able to like the first year my husband didn't come and somebody had to stay home with the dogs. And so I brought him last year, and last year we were in Kansas, and he was like a kid in a candy shop. He'd be off and I'd be at the booth, and he'd come back and he'd have like his arms full. And I'm like, what? And he goes, oh my God. He's like, there's so many awesome deals here. Like, and t-shirts are not that expensive. And, and he's buying raffle tickets for Wyoming. And I'm just like, oh my Lord, like, I don't know if we can afford for you to be off on your own, and he's all excited because this year he's like, yes, we're going to Wisconsin. And I was like, oh boy, I'm going to have, start saving your dollar bills and your $5 bills so you can buy yourself some stuff in the marketplace.
Yeah, I don't know. I love the marketplace of the Trapper Rendezvous. It reminds me of the opening scene of Aladdin, right? Where the guy's like, "What do you want? You want some fish? You want some beans?" Like, "Oh, I got a lamp." You can just find anything there. And
We
uh,
real funny story. We always seem to be camping over Labor Day weekend, which is when the New York State Trappers Convention is in upstate New York. And so I was like, well, we're right here. We got to go, right? So it's just happened the last 2 years, and I like to pop in and check out what other organizations are doing. And the first year we brought a friend of ours who lived up in the area, and he is kind of like an antique. He kind of sees some cool things and he likes to purchase them. And we got separated from him, and next thing I know, he's like, I gotta go get my truck. He's like, I bought like so much stuff off this guy, I'm gonna load my whole bed of my truck. And I was like, what did you buy? And he's like, I bought wagon wheels, I bought like lanterns. He's like, there are so many. And he now goes to any opportunity to a trappers convention that he can find because he's like, there are such good deals there. And I was like, you just never know.
oh yeah, Pier
Yeah, I
One
mean that's all.
Walmart's got nothing on a Trapper Rendezvous.
Yeah, no.
I know. Have we really tapped into the interior designer market yet? That's the real question. Are we promoting it to the right people?
Hey, trappers are excellent interior designers. I've been to a lot of trappers. I mean, great. There's fur everywhere. That's my style. So I
Well,
think
and I
you're
think I
in.
think to what Curtis said earlier about the beaver, I'm assuming it was a hooped beaver hide going first. You can't order that off Amazon, right? You can't, I can't go on to like Macy's.com and find that. Or and if I could, it's not going to be real beaver, so it's not going to last very long. Um, and so things like that, and I watched the original podcast that you guys did on trapping where Curtis talks about a beaver hat's going to last you 3 generations, and a hooped beaver is going to be a decor piece that you're going to have on your wall forever. And so you can't buy those on the regular marketplace, but where you can go to buy those is trapping conventions, or better yet, take the trappers course and or learn to trap and beaver trap yourself. There's nothing better than I last season I got my first beaver, and it was beautiful. My first two beaver, and it was a beautiful 52-pound beaver. I mean, he couldn't have had a perfect hide. And I'm gonna hoop it, because I want to hang it on the wall because I'm
Hmm.
so proud of it. And I have friends who are like, wait, what are you gonna do? And I'd show them pictures, and they'd be like, can I get one of those? And so now like I'm creating like this, it's not a black market, but I'm
Right.
creating like this interest among my non-outdoorsy friends who want to put that on the wall in their like cozy cabin room. And so yeah, I mean there's definitely a market there for real fur pillows and all that kind of stuff.
Or
Mhm.
the teddy bears. I see
Oh
people
yeah.
make possum teddy bears. Man, those
Yeah.
things they're pieces of art and they're soft and cuddly. I wanted one of those things.
Yeah, they're beautiful. Come to Trappers Convention, you'll be able to find them there.
Yeah, well, we could talk about the Trapper Rendezvous or convention, whatever you want to call it, all day, but definitely you folks need to look that up, mark it on your calendar. We're going to be there. It's going to be a party. It's going to be a fun time. Christina's going to be
Yep.
there. Mark it down. But then another really exciting thing that we need to talk about that's also only a state away is this Trappers College through Purdue. And so this is really unique. So we talked about the rendezvous. You can learn so much stuff and talk to so many people. That's awesome. But this is actually a structured, like basically college course for a week long. The Trappers College in Indiana. So can you tell us a little bit about that and kind of who takes the course, and then yeah, like what is it, mainly nuisance trappers, or is it people who are learning to trap for themselves? Kind of, yeah, just give us the scoop.
Trappers College it's awesome. So we are knee deep right now in planning Trappers College. It will be the week of September 10th through the 16th. I gotta make sure I get that right. And it's in Wolcottville, Indiana, which is in the northeastern corner. Um, and we stay at a YMCA camp, and we trap on the Pigeon River Wildlife Management Area, which is, I mean, it is just stunningly beautiful. And there's a beautiful river, obviously affords for water trapping. And so basically what Trappers College is it's this intensive, week long course where, without breaking it down in a nutshell, it affords the opportunity for anybody, and I mean anybody. We get people who have literally never touched a trap, all the way up to people who have been trapping 40, 50, 60 years, to come to camp for a week. And you're just learning the whole time, but you're also absorbing the conversations and the ability to ask questions and with your instructors and your fellow students, and you just never know. So we partner with Purdue University, we partner with Indiana Fish and Game, and we welcome anybody, literally. We do get a lot of animal control type people who are looking to expand their information for their businesses or to start that kind of a business. We get a lot of trappers, just, folks who want to learn more about trapping for whatever reason. And then we get a lot of agency people. We get a lot of biologists. We have had a bunch of R3 people come through the program, and USDA trappers and that kind of thing. And so just to give you guys an example, I went through it as a student in 2021, and now I'm involved in the administration, registration and all that. And last year in 2022, a normal class is about 60 students, and we had 22 states represented and 2 provinces in Canada, including Hawaii. And we had Alberta and forget the other province. But we had 4 students from Hawaii. We had students from Vermont. We had, I think it was like 15 or 16 game wardens or law enforcement officers from all over the country that came. And, because of that diverse student body, they do such a tremendous job in educating in a way that makes it make sense for everybody. So whether you're the law enforcement officer or you're the hobby trapper or you're the ADC guy, there is something there for everybody. And so just to give everybody kind of like an overview, a 50,000 foot view of Trappers College. You come in, you get interviewed on your trapping knowledge, you get interviewed on, what you're hoping to gain from college, and then they part you out. And we have 5 groups, and every group has a lead instructor and 1 or 2 assistant instructors, and then some groups have helpers based on how big they are, right? So group 1, which was the group that I was in when I was a student, is the beginner group. And it's usually the biggest because it's usually the ones with the least amount of experience or no experience, all the way up to group 5, which is our very experienced trappers. A lot of times we get repeat students, and their goal is to get to group 5. because just that level of trapping instruction and who you're trapping with. And you start at 6:30 in the morning. We go over everything. So we go over your equipment safety, repairing equipment, and making sure that everybody has the equipment that they need for that week. So if you don't have equipment, you can still come. We lend out equipment that you'll need for the week, which is everything, literally everything. So we get a lot of students who fly. So, obviously can't fly with most of your trapping gear, and or they just don't own it. And so we will give you whatever you need, whatever tools you need, we'll supply you with for the week. You're up at 6:30 in the morning, probably earlier, because I think breakfast is at 6:30. And then you go out with your group and you're in the field until about 3:00. We do land sets, we do water sets, we do group instruction, generally speaking. And then they break off and set and check traps. And then in the afternoon, we come back and we have round robin. So that affords you the opportunity. So group 1 then goes to maybe like group 2 instructors one day, and then they'll go to group 3 instructors. So every group is exposed to the instructors of every group, and each group teaches a different topic, whether it's wild hog trapping. And, we have an instructor who is a retired Tennessee game warden who is very active in trapping hogs down in Smoky Mountain National Park and stuff like that. And then we've got Gary Jepson, who is a long line trapper from Coyote Trapper and Lure Maker from North Dakota. And, we've got Mike Majur, who is going to teach you how to trap bears. And then you'll learn about mountain lion trapping, and all the way back to, we've got instructors who are going to talk about how you trap when you work full time, and how you're checking your raccoon DPs and that kind of stuff. We'll go over fur market and fur grading, and we do a whole day of skinning and putting fur up and all of that kind of stuff. And and then we have the Indiana biologist, fur bearer biologist, come in, and she talks about, what's going on and what the hot topics are, and what, is what happens across the country, and how they gain knowledge.
Jerry-Ann?
Yes. Yep. Jerry-Ann Albers. Yep. So she
Nice.
comes in and she does a great presentation on like really an overall picture of what's going on across the country. And in talking about, the hot topics and what animals are like gray foxes, obviously right now having some issues, and striped skunks and all that kind of stuff. And so you're just getting instruction literally from, 7:00 in the morning until like 10:00 at night.
From some of the best in the world too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, I just said this recently, when you sit down and look at the instructors as a whole, we've got instructors who trap in every part of the country, from, guys who are trapping up in Maine to like Louisiana to Washington and Oregon up to North Dakota. I mean, I don't think you could find a more well-rounded group of instructors. And then you pair that with, our biologist and the Brian McGowan from Purdue, and you just get this incredible, well-rounded week of information, hands-on. And then you're sitting there at lunch or dinner or breakfast, and you're chatting with your fellow students who also are coming from all over the country with all different kinds of backgrounds and experience. And it's just awesome. It is, for the price that you pay, it's invaluable, really. I mean, we could probably charge $1 million and it still wouldn't be, put the value on it. And of course, we send everybody home with an awesome little bag of, full of books and information and stuff like that. And the really neat thing is every instructor will hand out their contact information. I mean, their personal cell phones and emails for those who have that kind of technology. And they say, call me. And you know what? You can, and you do. And it was never, so I had never touched the 330, right? So that's a big body grip trap. And we can only use them underwater, fully submerged in New Jersey for beaver or otter. And so last year after Trappers College, I came home and I was like, all right, I'm going to put in for a beaver tag and, see what happens. And I got one. And I was like, oh boy, thank God at Trappers College, I sat down with my lead instructor EJ Kelly. And if you don't know who EJ is, just look for the big guy with the cowboy hat on. He's an old Iowa farm boy who moved to Wyoming, and he just is, like a linebacker, right? And so then the other two instructors in group one, Dan Schweitzel, who's from Illinois, and he does a lot of ADC type work, and he's just a super experienced trapper. And then we also have Charlie Meshach from Indiana in group one. And so I said to EJ, you got to show me how to set this thing. And he does it in 5 seconds without any assistance or, safeties. And I'm like, okay. So, I'm 5'3", EJ, like, and I'm a woman. I don't have that kind of strength. Can you walk me through it? And thank God he did, because then that allowed me to go home. And my husband laughed at me, and my husband's like 6'1", and he's this, big guy, and he's much stronger than I am. And so when beaver trapping season came around, I was like, look, I'm going to show you how to do this. Right. And I was like, check it out. And then so that was awesome. I felt confident that, I could do it supervised. and I went and I set beaver traps, and I got my first 2 beavers. And so, that is the kind of stuff that I love to hear from group one, right? These guys and girls are leaving group one. We had a couple people last year who'd literally never touched a trap in their life, period. And they're going back to whether it's their respective agency or, going home, and they're fired up, like they're ready. They want to learn. And so it's great, but you know what? That enthusiasm exists in all 5 groups. And, so we're really excited. We're about, I would say, half full right now. So if you are interested in learning more or attending, definitely check out the Fur Takers website or reach out to me, and I can get that information for you. There are a bunch of different opportunities too. If you're interested in attending, we've got this year, we had an incredible private donation to the college from a gentleman who had lost his granddaughter. And so in honor of her, he donated the funds to cover 3 fully funded scholarship spots for a young lady between the ages of 18 and 25. And so we've got that information is out there. You can find it on our social media. And then there's the Charlie Park Scholarship, which is open to anybody who's interested in attending. We have 1 position there. And then also, if you're involved in your local trapping organization in Illinois or whatever state you might be from, talk to them, because there's opportunities for them to also help fund you and get you to Trappers College. So that's kind of Trappers College in a nutshell. And I would recommend it to anybody.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. It's I don't think you will find that amount of information in any place. There are definitely private trapping schools and a lot of education going on, but there is like soup to nuts, A to Z, from start to finish is what we cover at Trappers College.
Yeah, it really seems like just the level of exposure that you're going to get really covers almost the totality of the fur bear experience. And, just highlighting some of the like talking about mountain lion trapping or black bear trapping. If you go to an Illinois event, chances are you're never going to be, exposed to that kind of stuff. So that's really intriguing. That's awesome.
Yeah, I definitely was a little cocky, and I came home and I was like, yeah, I could like trap a mountain lion if I wanted to. And my husband was like, slow it down. Like, you can't, but you kind of get that. And the other thing too is like, I learned about things and trapping and every year, even last year, and not as a student, but you just learn about what's going on around the country. And I had no idea. So rabies is a huge thing out on the East Coast. We rabies vector is really high, especially where I am. We have a lot of rabies cases. I had no idea that rabies didn't really exist in other parts of the country. Just kind of like those little things you don't really think about. And then trapping on Air Force bases and airports, and just the different kinds of trapping that's out there, how it's being handled. And really, those are the things you don't hear about. You don't hear about that, and you're not going to read about it, and you're not going to hear about it unless you go to, Trappers College, or you're exposed to these trappers who are doing that type of trapping.
Sure. And I assume it's a lot like hunting, and, everybody's got their own little specific strategies and techniques, and just hearing from, so many experienced people from different parts of the country, I mean, you can really start to hone in that information to decide what you can, really use in your kind of trapping processes.
Yeah, and like Curtis kind of mentioned before, and to go back to the previous podcast that you guys had done talking about the BMP. So obviously, I have certain restrictions in New Jersey. We can't use foothold traps, right? So, but I learned about that at college, and the BMPs did all that testing for these traps. And so you're going to go to Trappers College and you've got guys who are trapping all over the country and adhering to using traps that were, qualified and certified by the BMPs. But the placement and the accessories is probably not the right word, the accoutrements of the trap that they're using, the techniques, it's all different, what they're using to cover their trap pans and that kind of thing, and what lures are working in, Oregon versus what would work in Pennsylvania. And so it's neat. And it's nobody's wrong. Nobody's, it's I am a big deer hunter, and God, people will fight you to the death about what equipment they use and their methods, and if it's not their way, then you're wrong. And and the trapping world is just not like that. And I think that's probably because it's so easy to say and to show, like, well, I tried that and it worked, or I'm going to try this differently and that worked. And there's just not, it was a little kind of funny for me to see there's all these lure manufacturers in the trap. There's a ton of them, and they're all selling something different. Every rest, and they're secret. Like they're never going to tell you what's in them, and I'm always like, I sniff it and I'm like, well, what is it? And, you don't see that in like deer hunting. It's like the guys who are like, well, I made this and this works and nothing else is going to work. And, and that just doesn't exist in trapping. And they're all friends, they're all, and they all are competing, but they're not. So it's a unique opportunity, to see how people do things differently. And even amongst your group instructors and your students, you're going to hear so many different ways to do the same thing. And so it's neat because it gives you kind of like I pulled, a couple things from one person and a couple things from another person, and then you kind of mix it together and you make it your own, and it works. And nobody is out there telling me that I'm doing it wrong.
Gotta say, even like beyond the instruction, just the networking opportunities that you have is, where else are you going to go where you're taking the same class with maybe 10 game wardens from 10 different states and maybe 5 biologists from 5 different states and then trappers from all different states? From Hawaii. That's like, even beyond everything else, I feel like that alone is worth it, because you're going to come out of there with contacts. Like, whatever you want to do, maybe you do want to try trapping a bear, you want to try using one of those big Belial foot snares, and that sounds cool. Well, maybe you got a contact up in Maine and you can get that started. But geez, just from that standpoint, I'm like, sign me up.
Yeah,
cool.
And like last year, so we had students, we had 4 students from Hawaii, and we had 3 students from three students from Canada, and they don't have raccoons. Could you imagine a world where there isn't a raccoon, right? So we're inundated with them. And it's just those stupid little things you don't think about. And these guys, the guys from Canada are serious trappers. They are experienced. They are, just trapping in a different kind of world. I laugh, like, they're huge beaver trappers because beaver, is a big nuisance in the area where they're at. And, I laughed and I was like, yeah, beaver trapping is a lot of fun, except that it snowed and there was like 6 inches of snow on the ground and it made things a little bit difficult. They laughed, they're like, well, we're trapping in like 3 feet, 4 feet of snow. But then they got a raccoon at Trappers College and they were like, oh my God. And I was like, really? Like, really, a raccoon, but you don't realize it, So,
That's great.
my big catch at Trappers College was a possum. And my instructors were like, oh, great, another possum. But I was super excited because I was using a trap I can't use in New Jersey, and, in a way that I can't use it. And so whatever, I was proud. But yeah, just those things that, and meeting trappers from across the country, and especially the folks from Hawaii. They were so great last year, and getting to talk to them about what they're trapping for, and what it's like. And, I laugh. I said, there's no raccoons in Hawaii, like none at all. And they were like, well, we got one once in the park, in the national park. And they're like, but we think it came in on a shipment. And,
Sure.
and it's just like things you don't think about. So, but of course we don't have mongoose in New Jersey. So I guess it's like a fair trade-off. I'm not sure which one I'd rather have, but
Yeah, I was going to ask, what are they trapping in Hawaii? What was their main thing? Was it mongoose?
Mongoose.
Wow.
Yeah. It's pretty neat. So, it's an interesting, and we've had people come from like New Zealand and Spain, and, obviously their trapping is going to be just so different from what, we're doing, or most of us are doing in the United States. So.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. So, so many things to do and mark down on the calendar. Wow.
Yeah, and we'll have
Trappers
links
College.
down below, whether you're on YouTube, check the description, or if you're, in your podcast app, check the show notes, and we'll have, a link to the rendezvous, a link to the Trappers College, as well as a link to the information that was discussed about some of the scholarship opportunities. So make sure to check that out.
Cool. And yeah, so I think now is a good time just to talk about why might trapping appeal to somebody who's new getting into the outdoors. Like we from an R3 program, we know in Illinois, most of the Midwest, deer. Everybody's focused on deer. We do a lot of deer events. They're really popular, and yet deer hunting's fun. Deer are good to eat. Nothing's wrong with that. But one thing that sticks out to me about deer hunting is you sit a long time for very few shot opportunities generally for most
And
of us.
alone.
And
Yeah.
alone. It
Yeah.
can be kind of boring. And like for me personally, when I was a kid, the whole time I'm sitting up on a deer stand, I'm thinking about trapping, or I'm thinking about duck hunting, or I'm thinking about doing something else. And trapping, you're never stationary when you're trapping for me. So I just get to go. I get to walk and explore and learn about so many different critters. But for you, obviously, being in New Jersey, you have a bunch of different things you can do there, but still there's some things that are going to be the same. So what is it about trapping that you think might appeal to people who are just getting in the outdoors?
So for me, I started hunting I think I took hunter ed in like 2011, and I started out deer hunting. I started out deer hunting and bear hunting, and in just kind of spending a lot of time sitting there, you start to notice the other animals in the woods, and especially if you've got trail cameras out, you're noticing, what's going on. And I was hunting on a private piece, right, that had a creek across it. And one morning I remember walking down and seeing this animal. I thought it was a ferret. And I was like, whoa, like, why is there a ferret running along the creek? Well, it was a mink. And I equated the mink with my mom's mink stole that hung in our closet when I was a kid, and it scared the crap out of me because it had the feet and the ears attached to it. And I didn't realize that we had them in New Jersey. And I had befriended a local trapper, and he had come out and tried to trap mink on the creek, and he kind of took me along. And in those half-hour increments, I probably learned more about that property than I had living on that property for 4 years. And there's just an insane knowledge that you pick up about what's going on, what animals are there, what the behaviors are, and what the habitat and all of that kind of stuff is. And something really neat is, New Jersey was kind of lacking in bobcats for a really long time. Like we didn't have any. And now our population is thriving. And so when I first started hunting, I never saw a bobcat in person, but they would pop up on the trail camera. We still can't, we can't harvest bobcats here, but it's just something neat you get to experience. And so as a newer hunter, for me, a lot of people said, if you really want to learn the woods, if you really want to become a better hunter and hunt on sign versus, you know, the sort of modern day hunting of, you know, putting out bait and sitting there, you should take the trapper's course. And I was like, oh, okay, you know, that's fine. Like, I'm open to any opportunity to learn. And so I took the trapper's course in 2015. And I mean, holy cow, you really do. And there's no way you could learn everything. You'll never, you know, I sat at a trappers meeting the other day, and these guys have been trapping since they were like 5, right? So it's like 80 years. And they were saying they still learn something new every single time they go out. So, but you just kind of look at the woods a little bit differently. And I also equate it to like deer hunting versus turkey hunting. So we do a lot of mentored hunts. Deer and turkey are the most popular. And, you know, when you're deer hunting, most of the time, or some of the time, you're in a tree stand. And so you're getting a look down onto property in the woods. And when you're turkey hunting, you're on a ground level, you know, you're looking through the woods or through the field. And when you're trapping, you're walking, you know, and you're seeing a different view of the woods. And that helps you, in my opinion, become a better outdoorsman. It helps you better understand what's going on in the woods, what's going on in the fields, what's going on in the rivers and the waters, and what's going on around you. And it just gives you a better understanding of the ecosystem as a whole. And so for me, as a newer hunter, it definitely helped. You know, I didn't, like I said earlier, I didn't know about a fur market. So I really wanted to start trapping just to learn more about what was going on in the woods. And so it's just things like that. I mean, I literally could go on for hours about it. You know, there's so many benefits to it. And really the only negatives is the time. You know, trapping does take time. It does take, you know, it takes a little bit of knowledge and learning and kind of getting yourself set up to do it. And then, you know, really once that animal's in the trap, that's when the work begins, you know, that caring for the fur and skinning and fleshing and all that kind of stuff. That's where the real work is. It's not in setting the trap and getting the animal in your trap. It's once you trap that animal. So I would definitely recommend, and it's a great opportunity for anybody who's a newer hunter, newer outdoorsman, to learn their property and to spend time outdoors. You know, I mean, I'll walk miles sometimes checking traps, and just, you see lots of cool things. It kind of coincides depending on your season, sometimes with shed hunting. And that kind of thing. And you kind of get to, and I'm sure it's true, you know, I always say, like, when I'm turkey hunting, I see all the deer, and when I'm deer hunting, I see all the turkey. Well, when you're trapping, you see everything, you know, you're seeing all the deer, all the turkey. And so it's also a really great, I always say I scout 365 days a year. It doesn't matter what my primary focus of being out there is, I'm scouting for other things. And so it's a really great opportunity also to scout for deer and scout for turkey. And, you know, our trapping season in New Jersey runs through March. And so, which is prime time right now for scouting for turkeys. And so I'm always out there, like, just kind of like, oh, that'd be a great tree to sit up against. Or, you know, oh, that'd be a great tree for, you know, a tree stand for deer hunting and that kind of thing. So it's an excuse. No, it's not an excuse, but it's another great way to get yourself outdoors, and really kind of just pack your toolbox as a hunter and a conservationist.
Sure, and you're oftentimes probably walking in habitats that you may not venture, you know, into too often during, you know, deer or turkey season, especially if you're, you know, focusing on beaver or muskrat or some of these, you know, aquatic mammals. You know, you're seeing new areas. You're seeing a lot of cool stuff.
Oh yeah, 100%. You know, and waterfowl, like we were duck hunting this fall. We have a early season in October, and I was like, oh my gosh, we were on a river, and I was like, wow, this is like a great place to beaver trap. Well, that's where I'm beaver trapping this year. So, you know, it's just, yeah, you're just doing yourself a favor. You know, you're just doing yourself a favor.
And really immersing yourself in the outdoors, because it's like you said, you know, hunters see the obvious, trappers see what's not obvious. And so that takes a while to get there, but you know, we talk about it in workshops. If you're out hunting with a rifle, you're trying to get within what, 300 yards of game, pretty easy. You're trying to, with your bow, you're trying to get within 30 yards. You know, it's a little bit harder, but when you're trapping out of that whole landscape of the woods and the fields and the marsh, you're trying to get an animal to either swim through a box that's barely bigger than it or step on a pan that's the size of a $50. So you have to know that animal and exactly where they're going to be. Otherwise, you're just going to be setting traps and not catching anything in them. So for me, I know growing up, like trapping more than anything else is what got me interested in wildlife biology because it gets you thinking like an animal. I mean, I remember vividly being a kid and I'm setting a dirt hole on a creek bank, and so it's sloped like this, and it's a dirt hole, and I'm thinking this could be for fox, coyote, or raccoon, and I'm making it, and I'm like, oh, well, if a raccoon comes, he's going to work it from the high side, so I've got to put something there to block it. And then just afterwards, I'm like, yeah, I'm thinking like a raccoon. Like I think I've made it. Yeah, I've made it. You know, but it's just that realization that like all the time you're thinking about how the animals are interacting with the landscape, and it's a different level of scouting than any hunter has ever done because you don't need to have that level of accuracy as a hunter. So really cool, and just the diversity of trapping. We mentioned it, but yeah, marshes, beaver, mink, otter. You got the uplands, or you got the canids, and you know maybe bobcats if you have a tag, or if your state does allow you to do that. And then yeah, you got the plentiful raccoons and the possums, which a lot of times you're doing the landowner a favor. And so you may, that's almost like if you came out and helped them put up hay. You know, if you come out and you trap some raccoons around their corn silo or around their poultry or whatever it is, and you start asking for hunting permission, they're going to be a lot more likely to give you that permission because in their minds you've done them a service, even though you had fun. You know, they don't have to know all that part. You worked hard and you provided them a service, and um, they're going to be happy about that. So yeah, for me, I feel like there's a lot of reasons for new outdoors people to look into trapping, whether it's just to learn way more, or whether it's to develop relationships with landowners, or even we talked about it before, but just the crafty aspect. Maybe
Mhm.
you want that beaver hooped on your wall. Maybe you want a muskrat hat, you know, some nice beaver mittens you can put on when you're riding your snowmobile around. I mean, where are you going to get that if you don't go out and procure it yourself?
Right. Yeah, and it's interesting because you you think about like, wow, what can I do with this? And for me, so we had chickens, and this is kind of a sad, ironic story. When I was at Trappers College the first year, my husband, told me, sent me a picture, and all of our chickens had been killed. And we think it was by a mink or a weasel. And so, as a backyard chicken owner, again, but then people say, well, what do I do with it? And I'm like, oh my gosh, you could do 1,000 things. You can make Christmas ornaments. You could, there's so many things you can do with fur. And real fur is such a sustainable natural resource, that I think sometimes people don't really understand that there's, even if you just tan the hide and hang it on the wall, that's, some people, that's all they do, and that's great. And then some people, like we've got one of our board members, his girlfriend has just gotten into trapping since they started dating, and she had a raccoon coat made. I mean, and it's beautiful, it's stunning, and it's sort of a lost art, but it's becoming more popular as kind of that, wanting to do something with the entire animal is really kind of just driving a lot of people. We did a fur sewing class here for my women's group, and we made fur headbands. And I mean, you want to talk about warm? I wear it deer hunting, and it's great because it just keeps you warm, and nothing is going to keep you that warm as real fur. So it's just another reason why, we should trap.
But no, I don't know. There's a lot of fun stuff. I don't know. There's a lot of fun things coming up not far from Illinois. So this is an exciting time, I think, for people here. This, if anybody's thinking about starting to get into it or even just dip your toes, now's the time because we got the Trappers College coming up, and even if you're not ready to take that full step of the week long thing, the rendezvous you definitely want to come to. And I know we're definitely going to be there, and it's going to be a fun time. So we hope to see a lot of our participants there, and we'll get a bonfire, and who knows, maybe we'll bring some wild game and a little fry daddy and cook up some stuff. Who knows? It'll be a good time. I know that.
Yeah.
But I guess one thing we should kind of close it down with is, how do people join the FTA? And we'll put the link down so that they can get to the website. But just how do they join? And then after they join, when will they get their first episode of the Fur Taker magazine?
Yeah, so obviously go to our website, furtakersofamerica.com, and that's the easiest way, and you can join right there. Or you can always mail in your membership. And a 1-year membership or 2-year membership. We have junior memberships, and every membership comes with 12 issues of the Fur Taker magazine. And your membership will probably take about 45 days to 60 days to get your first magazine. So don't panic if you don't get your membership or your magazine right away because of the printer. It takes a little bit, but you'll still get 12 issues throughout the year. And we do have about, and I think I wrote it down, we have about 5, I think, local chapters actually in Illinois of fur takers. And you can go right on our website. We have a newly redesigned website. It's a little bit easier to navigate. And there is a button on the bottom, I think, of the main page that says, find the FTA in your state or something like that. And put in Illinois and see what's close, and check the event calendar for events coming up in Illinois. Follow us on social media. We're on Facebook and Instagram. And we have, aside from our local chapters and the national chapter, or I should say, aside from the national chapter, any of our local chapters, like, Curtis mentioned, they'll have meetings or they'll have workshops or rendezvous or anything like that. But also, again, like, just to make that connection, maybe find a mentor. Obviously Learn to Hunt is all about, mentoring in some form, in some aspect. And I think that is key to success as a trapper and as a new trapper. Just to kind of hook up with somebody who's got some knowledge, who can, just share some, even if you never meet in person, and you just kind of have somebody to have that connection with and learn from. And, like I said, that's what the FTA is all about. And we've got some really great members in Illinois who are just all about that. And they just want to help you, and they just want to learn. And you're going to learn from people who just, have so much knowledge and so much information to share that you could spend 5 minutes or 5 years talking to them, and you'll learn something every single time. So
I don't know
definitely
what it
check
is
out.
about trappers, but they seem to make the best teachers. They really do. When I
Yeah.
was in Wisconsin, I was just amazed at how all these trappers, they're all so different, different personalities. But when you get them in front of a class, I mean, they're like a little kid that you just set a sundae in front of.
And
That's
I think it's the patience. So I am a self-professed, I have no patience, right? So I want everything to happen immediately. And I think one of the things that trapping does is it forces you to slow down, because you've got to observe your environment, you've got to observe the animal, you've got to do all that. And then waiting, obviously. And so there's just this patience that most trappers I know have, and that makes them an incredible teacher. And I think because so much of trapping is hands-on, and whether it's hands in the dirt or hands on trap, or on traps, or hands in the water, um it's such a neat thing to see somebody kind of instructing somebody else or just giving tips, because they just get so passionate about it, and they light up about it. And yeah, it's a really cool thing. And there are just some really, really great teachers out there, especially in Illinois. So you guys are very lucky.
Yeah, and I got to shout out to my Wisconsin buddies too, because I worked there for a long time. We're
Yeah.
lucky here in Illinois, but it was really a lot of ways Wisconsin trappers who developed a lot of my love for R3, and really kind of gave me the drive that I have, because I seen some of those guys and gals that are Wisconsin instructors basically training their own competition and just putting their own money and time on the line year after year with absolutely no recognition, and they're ecstatic about it. And it's just something I feel like you don't see in any other form of outdoor recreation other than trapping. At least I hadn't. And I saw it in
Yeah.
Wisconsin. I'm sure it's here in Illinois too. And we should mention Illinois Trappers Association. You can also join up with them, and we highly recommend you join both. Join all three. Join the Illinois Trappers Association, join the FTA, and join the NTA, the National Trappers
Yeah.
Association. No reason not to be in all three. I think the cost for all three per year, even combined, is like less than $100. You'll
Yeah.
get magazines throughout the year to read and learn, and all these unique events that we just talked about two here today. But there's events like this that happen all over the country, all over basically the spring, summer, and fall until trapping season shows up, and then all these people are gone. You won't hear from them for 3 months probably, but the rest of the time it's a lot of fun to be had. So hopefully we've opened some people's eyes to some new fun things to do out there. And I promise you, anybody that comes to this FTA rendezvous, it's not going to be your last. You're going to find something there that you've never seen before. You're going to learn some things that you've never heard before, and you're going to basically meet a class of people that you didn't think still existed on this earth, but they're there, and they want you to come, and they're open, and they want you to be their competition. They'll train you, and they'll be happy if you trap on the next farm over, because just something about trappers. I don't know. They're a cheery bunch of overgrown, hairy, smelly people, and I love them.
And I would be remiss if I didn't mention, because it is your neighbor to the north. So Wisconsin Trappers Association, they, in partnership with the DNR up there, they do a women's trap camp. And if I'm not mistaken, so they did it the first time 2 years ago. It filled in like 30 hours, something like really ridiculous. And then last year, I think they opened it up to like 2 or 3 different camps. And so if you're a woman who's looking to get into trapping, who's looking to learn from other women, and I mean, there are some fierce women trappers in Wisconsin. You will learn from some of the best in this country. It's an amazing opportunity. They put on a great weekend, and definitely check that out. Even if you do live in Illinois or one of the other states, I'm sure they're more than happy to have you. And that opportunity is so close. It would be foolish to not take advantage of it if you're able to.
For sure. And I'm glad you alluded to that, because that's probably going to be maybe not our very next episode, but we're going to have one episode just about that that's going to be coming up. I've spoken to Sky Good, who's one of the people who runs that camp. And so, yeah, she said she'll be excited to talk to us sometime. And so, yeah, I'm glad you brought it up. That's not far away, and it's really unique because they do basically every instructor, every game warden, every biologist, every person involved they're all females.
Yeah.
So it's just and they camp out and they run a trap line and they do the sewing of the fur and the whole 9 yards. And
and they serve beaver meat and bobcat. I mean, like they serve, it's just I want to go. It's just a super awesome experience for anybody who's able to do it. So, yeah.
Sure. So stay tuned. We'll have a whole episode just about that. And well, who knows what else? We just keep finding cool trapping stuff to talk about. We may just be the Trapping Illinois podcast. Is it still too late to change our name? We already got that locked in. Well, you guys got any other questions? I don't know. We talked about
I don't think so. I mean, a million questions, but we've been talking for quite a while, so we'll let you get back to it, Cristina. But thank you so much for joining us. This was fantastic.
Yeah,
this was
well
great.
done.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. I appreciate it. I was doing a little bit of homework yesterday, listening to some of the past podcasts, and it's still deer season here, and I was encouraged to get out in the deer stand a couple more times before the season ends.
Lucky.
Cool. Awesome.
Yeah, we're past our deer season, so we're on to fun stuff like squirrel hunting and trapping. But we'll be thinking of you sitting up in the deer stand, being bored while we're blasting squirrels.
Yeah, and the only thing that walked by last night was a fox. So go figure.
Always see something cool when you're outside, though. You're not going to see it sitting on your couch, that's for sure. So get out there. We hope to see you in the fields and the marshes, and we hope to see a bunch of you at the FTA rendezvous. I'm already excited. I'm going to go put it on my calendar right now, and we're going to be there. So we'll continue this discussion in Jefferson County, Wisconsin, in the weekend of June 22nd. We'll be there.
And remember, direct links in the show notes or in the description below. All right, now let's talk a little bit about critter trivia. I know we had a pretty good question last week that kind of related to a previous episode. So if you've been, a frequent listener to the podcast, you probably had a pretty good answer for that one. But the question essentially was, what two species of raptors can apprentice falconers immediately start out with?
Yeah, that's right, Dan. And our falconry podcast, we definitely talked about this. So it was a red-tailed hawk and kestrels. So those are the ones that you can go and get, and then you can work your way up to a peregrine falcon is the next step. But is there any other ones that you could
Yeah,
hold
there's
on to?
steps between the long wing. So peregrine, I
Yeah.
think you have to be a full-on master
Full-on
falconer.
master.
So yeah,
Mhm.
there's apprentice, and then there's general, and then master. And I think the long wings, which would be the true falcons, like the peregrines and the falcons and any cross prairies, you have to be a master for. But yeah, there's several other species that are popular there in the middle, like I know Harris's hawk, and a lot of people will use not Cooper's hawk, but the accipiter that's just bigger, a goshawk. Northern
Oh,
goshawk
yeah,
is
yeah.
another popular
Yep.
one. Um, but yeah, they all have got their pluses and minuses. But that's a good two birds to start off with, because if you are comfortable with a large bird, you can get a lot of access to hunting with a red-tailed hawk. That's rabbits and squirrels, which most of us have a lot of those around us. And then if you're not quite comfortable with a big bird, a kestrel. It's a little bird. It can't hurt you that much. So even if you're getting used to holding them and how you're going to interact with them, there's not a whole lot you can hunt with a kestrel. It's going to be like mice and grasshoppers and stuff like that, but it's going to teach you how to interact with a hunting bird. And so good two birds to start with, and beautiful birds too. I
Beautiful,
love seeing
especially those
red-tailed
kestrels.
hawks and
Oh, they're
kestrels.
stunning.
Yeah, they're the ones you always see when you're driving. They'll be hovering, so they'll be flapping, but they won't be moving forward or backward, and they're just looking for any little mice or grasshoppers that might jump over the road. Super fun to watch because
Yeah,
most
normally you
hawks
always
won't
see
do
them
that.
across. Actually, Curtis and I, we were on a mentored squirrel hunt this past weekend, and on the way back, we were passing some power lines, and we probably saw, 5 or 6 kestrels all within a couple 100-yard distance. And that very last one had a little mouse dangling from his feet as he was sitting up there on the power line. So cool birds, very
Successful
cool.
hunt.
Yeah,
Yeah, super cool.
Cool. Do we have a trivia question for this week?
yeah. I got a couple. Unless Curtis has one off the top of his head.
No, I didn't. Let's hear your couple.
All right. I would like to know. We kind of heard a little bit about the beginnings of the FTA in this episode. She talked about how old this organization was, and I find that particularly fascinating. So if you can, think back to what she was talking about, what anniversary are they getting ready to celebrate? I know NWTF is in a pretty big year this year for their anniversary, and turns out FTA is older. I find that amazing. I had no idea. So pretty cool.
Pretty cool. So, what is the anniversary of the FTA? Yeah, that's a good question. Because
Hmm.
actually, if people go and look into the rendezvous, it probably says right there. It's like, this
I
is
would bet
our
it does. Yeah.
blankety blanked
Yep.
annual rendezvous. So, that's a good excuse to go look at the rendezvous page.
But I
Now,
tell you
Dan
what,
and I,
oh, go ahead,
oh,
Curtis or
I was going
David.
to say that you and I just did a NWTF banquet, and they were pushing their anniversary really hard because it's a big. It was 50 years this year. So when they did say how old theirs was, I thought the same thing probably that Dan thought. I was like, oh, that's more than the NWTF. Wow,
Yeah,
cool.
I would have never,
Yeah.
off the top, never assumed that. Nope, that's so cool. All right, well, thanks for joining us. I guess we'll catch you on the next one.
Yep. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks, everybody.